All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Kickback. We are live in the shop, and I've got Mr. Jelly himself, Jared Kelly, my personal sports analyst, um, Kickback's own KB Lockster, and you can find him on Twitter, running our running our X channel, posting about all of our sports thoughts, football calls, and bets. Jared, tell us what's up, man. What you been
Thrilled to
doing? What do you think about everything going on? What are you up to?
yeah, I'm thrilled to be on here today with you, Jeff. The football season's kind of winding down across both levels, more so college, obviously, and I know we were going to get to that today on the playoffs, but just great time of year for sports and a lot of great content to be had.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. And I don't know, I don't speaking of great content for sports, I don't know if there's been a more controversial time in college football especially. We've got a lot of interesting things happening in the NFL every season, and they make it a big thing every year. But this is the first time we've had the 12 team playoff bracket, and a lot of people have interesting things to say about it. And I know that you, in particular, have some strong feelings towards it. Now, I don't necessarily love the 12 team playoff bracket. I think there's a lot of handouts going on right now. I think it's really hard for the NCAA to, you know, put all of the best teams, like the teams we know that are the best in there, um, without hurting some feelings. Like you can't just make a 12 team playoff bracket, 8 SEC teams.
I wish.
I
If
think
if
we
I
all
was
do.
on the committee, I think that's what would happen. But yeah,
Yeah.
no. I think when they switched over to 12 teams, I think they thought it would be easier and like an easier decision to because I know last year obviously Florida State was undefeated, but their quarterback got hurt, so they got left out even though they were undefeated, which uh morally it probably wasn't the right decision, but we all knew if they were put in, they would have no chance to even compete with Michigan. So it's hard to draw the line, but I've always been kind of against the 12 team playoff. I don't think a lot of these first round games will be too competitive. I think eight would be the perfect number, but I understand what they're doing it for. More important games like a draft prospect's not going to sit out a playoff game if they're a 12 seed or whatever. But if it was a just a regular bowl game, they might sit out. So it's just I think it's better for ratings and it'll get more people to watch. Everything they're doing is for money, obviously,
Yeah.
but that's what everything's about. So I don't have a problem with that. But with the 12 team playoff, my issue is, it's like where do you draw the line between how many losses a team has versus who they've played? Like it's obviously very hard. Like for me, I know a lot of people think Alabama should have been in. I'm one of them, but at the same time, like I don't think they're a playoff worthy team, if that makes sense. But just for the fact that there's 12 teams in it, I feel like they should have gotten in. But like they don't necessarily like they lost 3 games, they had a couple of bad losses. They don't necessarily deserve to be in. But you have a team like Indiana who only has one loss. I don't really see them putting up a fight against Notre Dame. A team like SMU, who they were good all year, but I don't think they have a single win against a top 25 team. In had they not stormed back against Clemson last week, Alabama probably would have got in over them. And then I don't know. I have a lot of issues with it.
Well, and we can go down the line really and just address the teams, but I when you want to start at the top there where Clemson and SMU reside, I SMU being in the ACC in general, that's bullshit. Um, I think everything started to fall apart with this NIL stuff. Because as soon as you saw these players getting paid for what they're doing and in commercials and stuff like that, that's when you saw the breakdown of the conference, the conference construction. We used to have four or what is it? Four power conferences
it was five, Power Five.
Power
Now it's
Five.
four because they got rid of the Pac-12. Yeah, that all
There
fell
you go.
apart.
Yeah. So like we knew what caliber of football we were going to be watching, kind of depending on what conference you were watching, and it's it's very it's turning a blind eye blatantly to say that the caliber of football being played in the Big Ten or the Pac-12 was close to, SEC ball or even ACC when you want to look at Clemson at their peak. Clemson's ball at their peak under Dabo was relative to the biggest LSU teams, the biggest Alabama teams.
Yeah, I'd say Clemson's probably one of the top three programs in the last decade. I'd say it's probably them, Georgia, and Alabama over the past 10 years who have had the most success overall. So yeah,
Right. Yeah, and when you look at strength like that and how much the ACC has fallen off for SMU one to be interested in joining the ACC as that ship sinks because the ACC will not be around for a long time. I think that ship sinks before everything becomes one league. Just because they're bad, they get beat by everybody. And I think this is a testing ground for them to say, okay, maybe think about this. It's a testing ground where they go, okay, we're going to give everybody what they want. You're going to see some underdogs in here. You're going to have some controversy about who gets in and everything, but we're going to make it a fair playing field between all the conferences. Put your best guys in there, see who comes out. Because I think a lot of us thought, back in the day, if we did this 12 team playoff bracket, you would just see it flooded with SEC teams, and that's who would be playing for the national championship every year. And it still could turn out like that, but they're doing their best to not allow that to happen.
yeah, it's they separate it like that, and I agree with what you said about the ACC because obviously the committee doesn't necessarily like Clemson. Granted, they had three losses, but they won that conference. They were like in the not the playoff rankings, but in the like the last top 25 rankings. Clemson was ranked 16th, and they still had BYU ranked, or not BYU, sorry, SMU ranked 10th, even though Clemson had just beat them. But like they even had Clemson ranked below Miami. Like that shows you how obviously Clemson got in because they won their conference title game and they got the automatic bid. But yeah, they definitely don't value the ACC because even when Miami had two losses, but they had teams like Alabama, and I believe Ole Miss and South Carolina. They were all like ranked right around the same spot as Miami, and Miami had one less loss than all those teams, but they're playing in the SEC. They didn't really play an SEC schedule, obviously.
Yeah, nobody, you know. I really think if you've got a powerful team in the ACC, now you have to play SMU, but for a long time there, all you had to get through was Clemson and then keep Miami or Florida State from throwing a curveball in there. If you're one of those two teams, you're doing really good. But anybody else just hasn't had a prayer. And you said something really good a second ago that I wanted to touch on and kind of respond to, but we can keep rolling. I think
Was it
just
about
if we,
the automatic bid or
uh, yeah, the auto bid is interesting. I think, oh, South Carolina, man. Okay, you win your conference title, but you also got beat by a mid-tier SEC team.
yeah?
How how can they take the strength of schedule into account for Miami's ranking, but they can't take the strength of schedule into account for, South Carolina and then going to the toughest team in the ACC and beating them? How do you not factor that in and say, "Hey, Clemson, yeah, you won it." Or SMU, hey, SMU, yeah, you'd had a great season, but you lost your title, and nobody else from the ACC should really be in here. Like South Carolina's got to take your spot.
I feel the same way about that conference. I think definitely think South Carolina was deserving. Like even the game they lost to LSU, their quarterback was hurt. Sellers was hurt for a little bit.
Yeah.
and the backup, I believe, he was actually the Auburn quarterback last year. His name is escaping me, but he's not a very good player. And he threw a crucial interception at one point in that game. They had a block in the back on like what would have been a pick six on defense, which took the ball all the way back. So but they were like even they went into Tuscaloosa and that game came down to the wire. Like they honestly might have been more deserving than Alabama. And like you said, they had just beaten Clemson the week prior, but I guess the SMU or with that SMU getting in over them, I guess the committee didn't want any three lost teams in there other than Clemson, who had the automatic bid. So I guess that's they valued losses more than quality wins. What it
Mm,
came down to.
hmm. Yeah, yeah, I could see that. I mean, but yeah, South Carolina had some quality wins. Um, Obviously, we can look to our teams like, and I'm going to be focusing on a lot of SEC because that's really who I pay attention to. But let's
Mm.
let's walk down the list here and just, I mean, I don't know if you're looking at it, but can you go 12 through 1?
In the bracket or the like the bracket, the teams who
The
will be playing each other or the rankings.
Yeah, the bracket. Let's look at that.
All right, so you want to go from 12 to 1?
Yeah.
All right, so the 12 seed will be Clemson. Do you want me to mention who they're playing, their opponent, or just go down from 12 to 1?
Yeah, let's go down the line real quick and kind of see what we're working with, what their final ranks turned out to be.
Okay. Yeah, at 12 was Clemson because they got the automatic bid. 11 was SMU. They were the next lowest team ranked overall. 10, Indiana. At 9 came in your Tennessee Volunteers.
Nice.
8, Ohio State. I think
Love
that'll be
them.
a great first round matchup for sure.
Oh, it's going to be a great game.
7 was Notre Dame. 6, Penn State, who and they put up a really good fight against Oregon last week. They surprised me last week. I'm not gonna lie. 5 was Texas.
Yeah, fair.
4, Arizona State, Big 12 champions, and they look really good in their win over Iowa State. At 3, Boise State,
And out of where?
the Mountain West Conference. Hey, I don't
Make
know.
it make
Yeah,
sense, please.
yeah, that's one of my gripes is the auto buy.
Yeah,
2, Georgia, and then 1, obviously Oregon, the only undefeated team we have left this year in college football.
Oregon. Mm. And does Oregon play? No, they would play Arizona, wouldn't they?
No, they are going to play the winner of the Tennessee Ohio State game.
Right. Yeah, but
Arizona State,
who's in Oregon's season? Like,
like their side.
yeah, yeah, but like who is Oregon playing during their regular season to warrant being team number one? Like
Oh,
Boise State could be undefeated because they have a good team in a cupcake conference,
or well,
I
I mean,
think.
Oregon played a pretty tough, decently tough. I mean, they played Ohio State this year.
Okay,
Uh, they just beat Penn State in the conference
good.
title game. I mean, now that they're in the Big Ten, I'd say the Big Ten's probably regarded as the second best conference in college football now. So,
Right.
I mean, they didn't really have a cakewalk. They played some good teams. The Ohio State win was good. So I think they're deserving of that number one spot. And they like their offense last week was great. I don't even know if I think they maybe punted once or twice, but
Wow.
it seemed unstoppable against Penn State. So I think Oregon is definitely deserving of that number one spot. But like if they were to um go like so they're gonna have to play now if they since they have the bye in order to win a national title, they need to play 3 games. So they're going to play in the quarter. They don't have to play in the first round, but they'll play in the quarters, the semis, and the championship. So just looking at it this way, they'll either play Tennessee or Ohio State, who's those teams, uh, not counting the playoff rankings, just the actual rankings of the top 25 teams, not the seeding. Ohio State was ranked sixth in the final rankings. Tennessee was ranked seventh.
Hmm.
And then in the semis, they would have to play Texas, who is the third overall ranked team right now. And then let's say Oregon were to get to the finals, I would assume they would probably play against Georgia or Penn State. I would assume would come out of that other side of the bracket. Obviously, you never know, but most likely those are the second and fourth ranked teams right now. So, like, Oregon's the number one seed, but if they, of the 3 games that they're going to have to win and win a national title, it'll probably come against three of the top five teams other in the country, not including themselves. So, like, I'd argue that Penn State has a easier path, so to speak, to winning a national title, and they just lost to Oregon last week. That's why I believe that the auto buy system is flawed. I understand the auto bid, like rewarding the conference champions for winning their conference. I think they should get an automatic bid. That I agree with. The automatic buy, I don't like. Boise State and Arizona State should not be the 3 and the 4 seed. I'm sorry.
No.
Like if we were to just go off the top 4 teams in the country, it would be the 2 teams that were in the Big Ten and the SEC title game, which I completely agree with. And I think if there was uh, just a 4 team playoff this year, similar to years past, I think the top 4 seeds would be Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State. Like I think they should just do the final rankings for the top 12 as opposed to the way they have this bracket set up. I think it's a flawed system.
Yeah, and maybe even, don't put the conference champions, okay, they won their conference, Oregon, Georgia, Arizona, Boise. Th- Like, yeah, it's flawed getting the buy. They could set it up in a much more friendly way. Even if you want to give them a buy for getting, their conference champion, don't blow smoke up everybody's ass, ranking them as a 1 through 4.
Exactly. Yeah,
Boise
that's the
State,
thing. Like,
Boise State, like had to pay so much money to get that number 3 spot.
yeah, they're number 3.
Like they can sniff number 12. You won your conference. You can sniff number 12 if you pay us enough money. That's what they should have said. This is all a money game and everything and how much people pay to get ranked and everything. But, you know, God, let's just be real. Don't Boise State is going to get blown out by the first actual team that they play.
Yeah,
By
exactly.
actual team. Yeah.
They're probably gonna play Penn State in that quarterfinal round, and I mean, I don't. It'll probably not. I mean, I guess I would probably say out of all the 3 conference champions that obviously people aren't regarding as very good as Clemson, Boise, and Arizona State. Out of those 3 teams, I honestly think Boise may be the best of the 3, but just they in no world should they be ranked the third seed. It doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. And it's such a stark contrast between, like, you remember LU and JMU, Liberty University and James Madison went
When
crazy
they were like
last year.
undefeated or
Yeah.
right,
They
yeah,
were both undefeated and they could barely break out of the top 20.
yeah,
And
exactly.
and their I would argue that their conferences are compatible to the Mountain whatever conference
Mountain
that,
West, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Mountain West and Boise. Like, I mean, instead of putting Liberty University last year up against Oregon, put them against that Boise team. Let's see what happens.
Hmm.
You know, there's just there's a lot going on right now where we're trying to make too many people happy and make it seem too fair.
Yeah, and I think that was the whole point of the just going to 12 teams. And yeah, I agree. I think Alabama's always gotten the benefit of the doubt. Like I think last year they were the first 2 loss team to get in the top when it was 4. And I just think the committee didn't want to look bad again, so they just whatever. I don't necessarily think Alabama really would have been threat to win a national championship this year. But if they were put in that 11 seed and had to play Penn State and then Boise to get to the semis, but they weren't a consistent enough team this year to win four straight games. So I honestly think the committee just to look better, they just put SMU in, whatever, try and not seem like they have that SEC bias like they have in years past. But ultimately, I think as fans, we're gonna suffer on this on December 21st and December 20th, the first 2 days of the first round. I don't think those games are gonna be very competitive because of the way they rank these teams.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the only thing I'm looking forward to in the first round is that Tennessee Ohio State game, and
I
you
feel
know,
this. I feel the same way.
I think Ohio State and Oklahoma have always kind of been in the same pool with me. Like kind of when I think about in Texas, I can throw Texas in there. Um, they're always blown up. They're always overhyped. Oklahoma was supposed to be a powerhouse this year, and it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Switching to the SEC did not go
right,
over well for them.
right. And Ohio State is supposed to be a powerhouse every year, and then that what did Michigan almost beat them?
No, they lost. Yeah, they lost to Michigan at
Yeah,
home. Like that
yeah,
was probably the worst loss Ryan Day has ever had. They were north of 20-point favorites. It was pretty bad, but you know, and that was their second loss on the year. So I honestly don't know. I honestly don't really feel like they should get a home game though. In that, like I could make a case
no,
Tennessee should be ranked 8 and they should be 9. But
right. I mean, when you look at strength of schedule and you look at, the blunders that they faced, like uh, Tennessee had a lot, they had a lot better games against teams that they lost against. Um,
yeah,
maybe one game where they looked as bad as Ohio State did against Michigan. Um,
yeah. It was who was their bad loss? Was it Arkansas or was it?
yeah, yeah, it's going to be Arkansas.
Yeah, they
If
lost 19-14 against Arkansas, and then obviously they lost at Georgia. But
right, and
everyone
the
gives
Georgia one is
Georgia.
like it's a toss up. It's just like Bama, Georgia. Like you've got the powerhouses of the country going up against each other, and it just depends on who's on that day.
Hmm.
And it's a coin flip at that point, and Georgia just they wanted it more. You could tell Tennessee moments too big, piss down your leg kind of thing. But I, I'm not totally sold on our Vols, but I think they get past Ohio State pretty good, and then making a run at Oregon will be a huge. I would, how would you put that? It's going to be a good calibrator
Test
for what
or
we're about to see.
yeah,
You know, if we have a strong Oregon team who's getting kind of bested by Tennessee in the second round, but they still
yeah,
pull out. If even if they pull out the win, it's kind of like, okay, here we go. Let's watch Georgia just fucking demolish these guys.
yeah. I know. Well, I think that Tennessee Ohio State game a lot may come down to the weather. I think if that game was in Tennessee, I would definitely pick Tennessee, but I could still definitely see Tennessee winning. But if it ever happens maybe snowing or just really cold and really miserable, I think they may struggle, especially on offense. But I mean, we'll see. But I think they're basically fairly even matched teams. I honestly would say Tennessee maybe a tad better, at least offensively.
I like where this is going. The home field advantage here. I gotta close this meeting and then open it back up, but I want to keep going on the Ohio State and Tennessee home field advantage because I think that's going to be electric. Good transition. Yeah, Tennessee at home against Ohio State. I think that's a lock. Just because I think Tennessee is a stronger team season wise, schedule wise, and experience. Um, but Ohio State at home, and think about this. This is the first time, I think this is the first time we're seeing a home field advantage in a playoff
In the
setting.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Uh-huh. And I actually would say that's probably one of the other cooler things about this for the students at the schools. even though it's right around Christmas time, I'm sure all these games will be sold out for sure. But that's something like that'll be a totally different type of atmosphere because typically all these games are on neutral sites. So I think that's another thing. One of the few things I agree with the 12 team format.
Yeah. So what happens? I mean, we know that a team visiting Neyland or really, I mean, any playoff game where you can go and sell out your whole stadium and you've got that energy in your whole city where all these people are filling in, not to mention the money the cities make. But let's say Tennessee were to beat Ohio State, is that next game at Oregon?
No, so it's solely the first round that is at. So just the only teams that will be playing a home game is the 5 through 8 seeds. So the first round will be the weekend before Christmas. So then that'll be on the 20th and 21st, and the following weekend on the 28th. So the quarterfinals, which will be 4 games, and also the semifinals, which will be another 2, so a total of 6 games. Those 6 games, those will be considered the New Year's Six Bowl. So uh is I don't even remember. It's what the Orange Bowl,
Rose Bowl.
Rose Bowl. I'm trying to pull. Yeah, so Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Peach Bowl, and Fiesta Bowl. Those are the ones that I couldn't think of. But so those will be those 6 bowl games, which those like the Rose Bowl's normally between the fifth and the sixth seed, or what like the 2 teams that didn't get into the top four. So I kind of like the way they're doing that. And then the national championship is just it's the national championship. So I like the way they broke it down to where 5 through 8 they get their a home game. There's a little something at stake, but the difference between 5 and the 8th seed is you get a home game. If you're 1 through 4, you get a bye, so you don't have to worry about the first round. And the ninth through 12th has the toughest path, and I think that's pretty much how it should be. Reward the higher seeds for
Yeah,
their work.
I can agree with that part. They didn't do a bad job. It was half of it was okay, let's make a good setup to use for X amount of years. They'll be on this for a long time, I feel like. Um, and they hit it pretty good the first try, but the mistake they made is like we were talking about, just giving these teams, hey, here's a handout, get in here. We got to change things up. We can't keep blowing Bama. Um, that's kind of a deep breath for the CFP board, where they're like, hey, Bama lost 3 games. We can't. There's nothing they can say or do that will justify like, you know, I feel like they felt like their bread was pretty buttered there, but there's still points to be made, like in terms of strength of schedule. But if we were to go through our matchups here, who like I watched a video my uncle sent me, and this guy said last year I called every every game of the playoff correctly, and I told you what their scores were going to be, like within a couple digits. That it was impressive. And then he did it again this year. He said, "I know we have 12 teams, but I'm going to put my picks in." He had he had Tennessee going all the way playing Georgia.
Really. So he really has that. I like the SEC bias.
Yeah, I mean, I like it too. I like that, but it's I want to get your view on, what you're thinking on these picks and what somebody could stake for like a little future bet if the odds are pretty good right now. But let's break down a few good games because I mean, I don't really know much about the teams other than the ones I follow, like Georgia and Tennessee. You know, what are we looking for you know, Penn State to step up to the plate and actually play the hard-nosed football that everybody's been looking for the past like 5 years.
Yeah, so they have SMU in their first round game. That'll be Saturday, December 21st at noon. Uh, I would expect them to win that game. Their offense really uh, stood out to me on Saturday night. They were able to run the ball against Oregon. Their tight end Tyler Warren he's probably the best tight end in the country. He wears number 44. He almost seems more like a fullback than a tight end, but he's a stud. And I could see them making some noise because, like we were saying earlier, they have the SMU game. They're almost 10-point favorites, and then they're going to play Boise State at a neutral site. And they should win that both of those games. You would think.
Yeah.
So I
Now,
could see Penn State making some noise, even though I'm not a huge believer in Drew Aller. It's just a mix of they're playing pretty well right now, and I also really like their path that they have.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, going from SMU to Boise State, people could make the argument, oh, Boise State's the number three team in the country, but they're really not. Um,
Yeah,
and that's
no,
where a lot of people are going to miss that. And hopefully the books, when we get to it, the books are going to be saying they're going to be showing how bad that matchup is.
yeah,
I don't
uh-huh.
think I think you can fool most college fans by, putting up a panel and saying, oh, this is who we think is winning. You can't fool Vegas, baby. The line on that game, I mean, if SMU is giving or if SMU is getting 10 from Penn State, Boise still gets 7 points at least.
I would assume it'd probably be right around a touchdown. Yeah, which it's okay, but I would still expect Penn State to win that game by double digits. Just because Boise State did put up a fight against Oregon early in the year, so I can't totally like put them down. I think they lost to Oregon by like a field goal in Oregon. Like, but I mean, this was early in the year, and they've had a couple of games recently where they haven't played great, but they've found ways to win, which is a sign of a good team, obviously against lesser competition. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, you, you can't really go off the rankings. You more got to look at what Vegas is saying and the lines there, because they're the ones who really know,
Yeah.
of
I mean,
course.
if I was setting the lines on those games, I mean, I would have Penn State giving 10 to SMU. Yeah, you could go more than that. I would match it against Boise at least, just because it doesn't seem like they're that deep, or this could easily turn into another moments too big, piss down your leg type deal. These guys, I mean, they really shit and fell back into it, man. I mean, it's like no way in September or August did Boise State think that they would be ranked number three in the country. Even if they went undefeated, I don't think you could have looked at one of those players and said, "What do you think you'd be?" They'd be like, we wouldn't make it inside the top 12." It'd be another Liberty SMU situation.
Uh-huh. I mean, it's good for those schools because I kind of respect Boise State though because they scheduled Oregon this year. Like they've been good in the past few years. Like they've built their program up from the bottom, and you know they're never going to be a powerhouse, but I think make being a top three seed or what like that will probably help them draw some better recruits, and I think that other lower level teams shouldn't be afraid to schedule the bigger schools, especially like it's the only way you're going to get better.
Look at Notre Dame.
Yeah, exactly.
Notre Dame and who was that? Uh, Illinois State or something. It wasn't the actual Illinois, like, what do they
Yeah,
call it?
the
Achilles or
team that they
something.
lost to, I can probably
Oh, that was so awesome. That was awesome.
uh, I can pull it up. Just give me a second. They lost
Again.
to
And
It was Northern Illinois.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was that was a funny loss.
I mean, so Notre Dame can get beat by Northern Illinois, but Bama can't get beat by Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Oh, yes, but the only thing is Alabama had three losses, so it's I understand it. sense. But
Right.
well, I just hope Notre Dame, they'll I'm sure they'll beat Indiana, but I hope Georgia really, ends them. Even as much as I dislike Georgia, I part of me is rooting for them just for the SEC and that narrative that we all I think we both feel the same way about that conference.
Right. Yeah, and speaking of just how tough it was last season to see Michigan win that, I don't think there's a team that I would. I mean, I would rather see. I would rather see Florida State win it before Michigan, and I hate Florida State.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Michigan either.
Yeah,
Especially Harbaugh's a great coach, but he can aggravate me sometimes. But they were the best team last year, and
yeah.
they deserve to win. But
And we were talking about it the other day. I think Georgia is kind of limping right now.
yeah,
Our
with the injury to Beck, I haven't seen any updates on that. I'm not sure what the deal is with that.
I saw one on Monday. He said, or his family said, they're exploring treatment options. No specific timeline is laid out.
Yeah, I mean, if surgery is a possibility, I would, it depends. Like earlier this year, he was projected to be one of the top quarterbacks taken in the draft, and as the years have gone on, I don't even know, he's probably won't even be a first round pick. He's been so bad this year, but I would assume if it's anything questionable, I would probably expect him to probably get the surgery for, because if you he's played in big games before, but you know, I would understand part of him wanting to win a national championship though, because he probably may never start in the NFL. I mean, you never know. So I would understand trying to toughen it out and play through it. But I mean, that backup didn't look too bad the other day. But I think if you
Stockton?
give, yeah, I think if you give a defense a couple of weeks to prepare for him, I would expect him to struggle a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think Stockton's play style is developed enough to throw curveballs at people like Beck could keep you on your heels a little bit. He's not bringing the same game every week, but then that's also a problem for Georgia because he's not bringing the same game every week.
Hmm.
Beck was kind of a wild card for their team, and I was really impressed when Stockton stepped up, and it was like they didn't even change out quarterbacks. Stockton was
No,
ready.
he played better than Beck played in that first half. That's for sure. I mean, they had 3 points at halftime, and they scored 19 points in the second half. So, uh, yeah, I think that they definitely have an easier path to the finals. They'll go. It'll be Notre Dame or Indiana, and then either Boise State or Penn State. So they'll be favored in those games, I think for sure. But
So we're looking at, I like, I'm not gonna lie, I like Indiana over Notre Dame. Um, I think they give a good surprising push to make that win. Notre Dame's gonna have to play a lot harder than they think. Um, Indiana's push for coach of the year as well. That's gonna come into play. Don't know if this guy's gonna get a little overzealous or risky or do something crazy, but
he feels very highly about himself. That's for sure.
that's what I've kind of noticed.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm a fan of it, but I guess I respect the confidence.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? But there's only so much you can help when you've got ESPN blowing that up your ass at the same breath of, you know, competing with Deion Sanders.
Yeah, no, for sure. I
We're going to blow them up in the media and make them big and make this the
he's turned
story.
that program around, so I can't, totally say I don't like him, but some of his comments, like it seems like it's some of his comments are I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Like,
Overzealous, maybe.
yeah, and I think it motivates the opponent to want to beat them. Bulletin board material is kind of what I was looking for. Uh, if I was an opponent, I wouldn't want to just beat Indiana. I'd want to beat him too because some of his comments are a little much for me.
So I mean, do you think he's intentionally trying to paint this villain arc for him in Indiana?
Uh, yeah, I would say yes, and I think he probably knows that his players respond well to that. Like he probably likes, to be more of an underdog and to just I think if you're a good coach, you know what your players respond to. So I think that's probably part of it. So I would say he probably is a good coach, but we saw them go to Ohio State and that game got out of hand fast for them. So we'll see when they play a real team, but
We'll see what they're made of. I think a lot of that psychology part comes in. It reminds me a lot of Conor McGregor entering the UFC. He was
Mhm.
he was a whole lot of talk and kind of made himself out to be the bad guy that everybody wanted to win and piss everybody off. He just kept
Because
seemingly
he played that bad guy, some guys like to play that role.
yeah, and it works for them. Like mentally it works for them and gets them locked in. Where Saban, he was old school gentleman. Yeah, we're the best. I don't need to do anything flashy or draw any extra attention. I'm just going to sit here being the best and be quiet. It was a beautiful program they had for a long time, and I think we're going to miss that for a long time. But Kirby Smart, Josh Heupel, they'll follow in footsteps there. I don't think Bama stays with that new coach from Washington. I think they get rid of him this winter.
Really?
I,
Already?
there's no reason why I would say to keep that guy. He is such a bum. I mean, just from watching their game against Georgia, somebody who can have a lead like that going into the second half and play rush offense the entire second half. You're up by 10 points in the fourth quarter and you're playing rush high tempo offense, trying your hardest to give the ball back. That's what they
Yeah, I think he's not the best head. I think it'd be a little early to let him go after just the 1 year,
Mhm.
but I like him more of an offensive mind, not necessarily a head coach, but they signed him to I think a pretty big deal. I can't imagine him going anywhere yet. I think he needs a couple years to, build his own program because what Alabama was before, that's not gonna it's not gonna be like that, Like you see this year they had a lot of stupid, undisciplined penalties that you would never see in years past. And I think that was the biggest difference between him and Saban. Like just, it's just different.
The
It'll never
discipline
be
on the
how
players.
that was.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's another thing, you know, I've been a long time. I mean, I've been watching Saban since before I had a favorite football team. And uh, one thing about him is that when he started losing control of his players is when it's when they lost to LSU, it's when they lost to Georgia, when they lost to Clemson. It's it was right after the Clemson era, their little rivalry, I think, was the start of Saban losing control over these kids, and they're making their own money, and they're not dependent on a coach figure to lead them and tell them what's best for them. They're making money, they're making their own moves. They don't need coach. There's a lot less respect there anymore. And I think he got fed up with it real quick because, like you said, there's no discipline. Uh, that was the biggest difference between, the AJ McCarron absolute powerhouse Alabama. Nobody will ever beat that team except maybe Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
That LSU
Yeah.
team might hold a candle to that AJ McCarron Bama team, but um, when you look at that team 10 years ago compared to what they were last year, there's no
No,
comparison.
yeah, it won't be the same. I think college sports in general are not the same anymore with the NIL that you mentioned. That's why Saban wanted to leave. He was like, you know, these guys are acting entitled like NFL. It basically has become NFL, and
Yeah.
these guys, they haven't arrived yet. They're younger than us, like, but I understand that, they're getting paid to play, which I kind of think they deserve because the amount of time they spend in the practice facility with games, traveling, watching film, I'm sure they spend more hours than someone would working 40 hours a week at a full-time job. So I think they deserve to be compensated for sure, but it's gotten out of hand,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it definitely has gotten out of hand. And, Saban and Kirby Smart were actually getting together trying to not get rid of NIL money, but cap it at something reasonable. Like you
Yeah.
can have Texas players rolling up to a home game in a parade of Lamborghinis and Ferraris. What world are we living in where these 19, 20-year-olds are rolling in these insane cars? There's
It
just for being on just for being on one of these teams. I understand it's a lot of work, but there's people out there. There's people who put in more work to be on a college golf team, on a college, I don't care if it's swimming or soccer. There has to be a cap to make all this stuff fair, or you're just going to get at the end of the day a bunch of people chasing this NIL money in this one sport. It's going to come down to baseball, basketball, and football, and everything else is going to kind of fall to the wayside because kids are going to be. And I'm not a swimming fan, but or soccer or anything like that, but kids are going to grow up and just be like, why would I play this anymore? Even though I'm interested in it, why would I play this anymore when the only people are getting paid?
it's football. Yeah.
Well,
And
football guys don't.
kids aren't dumb. They'll chase the money, like especially the people who are the best athletes and can play any sport they want. And I wouldn't blame them. Like I would understand why they would do that. So I think yeah, the whole spectrum of college sports has changed, and I don't think it'll ever be the same. But as a fan who just sits back and watches, I don't think the product is much different.
Right.
But I'm not a fan of seeing someone on, I don't know, say Ohio State and be like, oh, is that the kid from Tennessee? Like he just left, just whatever.
Dude,
It happens every single day
it
or every
happens
single
every
Saturday.
day, and I'm so glad you brought this up because I mean, I hate the transfer portal. Uh, I think it takes all the commitment. It takes, not only are you with the NIL money, you're taking the college spirit out of it, where teams wanted to win the national championship because they loved their school and they had loyalty there, and they fought that hard for their school. But with NIL, everybody was worried about, oh, there's no loyalty involved. There's no, commitment involved where they're just going to go where the money is. That's what they're doing. But at the same time, they're trying to upsell. Like this kid from Mississippi State, they just went 2-10 and they did not win a game in the SEC. Zero wins in the SEC. And this guy, this wide receiver, freshman wide receiver from Mississippi State turns around and posts on Twitter and goes, I'm officially on the transfer portal.
Yeah. So they don't waste any time.
No, no.
None.
It's like you see people in the comments like, where are you gonna go? Toledo?
Yeah.
Like, where are you gonna go, dude? You're not giving yourself any time to grow with the program. You're showing zero commitment to the people that recruited you. There's like, how does that put a good taste in somebody's mouth? Like, if he's looking at maybe going to NC State or Virginia or something, how does that put a good taste in their mouth when they go, oh, we have a bad season or we have a mediocre season. This kid's just going to up and leave. Why would I waste the time trying to get him here?
Yeah, they're just too entitled and everything. And I think a lot of these kids are raised that way. So, but the days of the old days is it's not the same anymore, especially in college sports.
I agree. Well, let's go through. Let's wrap it up. Let's hear your picks in the playoff. Make your bracket here, so everybody can tell you.
So you want the full bracket?
Yeah, give me a rundown on how you see this thing going.
All right, so I'll start with Ohio State and Tennessee. Actually, you know what I could do is once like I could probably maybe try and fill it out online or something and maybe send it over to you and you can upload it for the viewers.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to go against Tennessee here. I think Ohio State's gonna pull out a win. I think they've probably heard how much they suck over the past, it'll be almost a month, like 3 or 4 weeks since they last played against Michigan. I think they're gonna come out ready to play and beat Tennessee in a close game, but I think the home field advantage is gonna just play a major factor there.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll take Texas over Clemson in a rout. I don't think that'll be a close game. I think that might be the biggest blowout we see of the entire playoffs.
Okay.
And then over on the other side, I'm gonna take Notre Dame over Indiana. I just think they're bigger, stronger, more physical, better athletes. But Indiana had a good year. I just think that run's gonna come to an end. And then I have Penn State beating SMU handily. I think uh, all the people who disagreed with SMU getting into the playoffs will be proven correctly. And then we're going to go to the second round. I think Oregon will beat Ohio State once again. Uh, I think that'll be another tight game, especially at a neutral site. But I think Oregon's the better team, and they're playing better right now. I have Texas beating Arizona State.
Mhm.
Then I have Georgia handily beating Notre Dame. I honestly don't even care who's playing quarterback in that game. I just Georgia's going to beat Notre Dame,
Right.
and then Penn State over Boise, like we were both saying earlier. I think that'll be just just better athletes, bigger, stronger, more physical. It's the same thing. Like it's like it'll be like when you're in high school and you're playing the JV team. It's like it's just not fair.
Yeah.
I could see that happening, and then I actually think Texas is going to beat Oregon in the semifinal. Even though I'm not a huge fan of Texas, I just think it's destined to have two SEC teams play in the finals here, and then I'll take Georgia over Penn State. But ironically, the teams I have in the semis are the two teams in each Big Ten and SEC championship. I think they've probably been the four best teams all along, and I think those would have been the four teams that would have gotten in if it was a four-team playoff. And then I think Georgia's going to beat Texas for a third time. I have Georgia winning this year. I think regardless, I see an SEC team winning, but I think whether it's Beck or Stockton, I just think Georgia they have the better athletes. The best the best recruits, the best players, the best defense. I think Georgia's going to get it done.
I love it. And I could see all of that is reasonable and probably will play out like that. I mean, as much as I want Tennessee to do better, but Georgia and Texas in a third game this season, like how do you not think that these guys have been, thinking about this? They're probably looking past these teams and looking at Georgia at the end of the road and, kind of foaming at the
I
mouth.
think so too. Yeah, I don't think they should overlook Oregon, but yes, I agree. I think that they are probably, they had their eyes set on that matchup for sure.
Yeah. Well, good deal. I'll throw that graphic up. People can tell you, they can follow you, your bets, your tweets, or your posts on X at KB Locks Bets, right?
Hmm.
Dot lock.
Yes. I'll get it for you real quick.
Yeah, plug it real quick.
KB underscore locks bets.
Bet.
Yes.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And you guys can follow us at kickback.show on Instagram, kb.locks on Instagram. We post some decently funny stuff there. A lot of sports stuff, just shit talking mainly. But Garrett, I appreciate you coming on today, and hopefully we can do it again. Love always hearing your sports intellect, and I look forward to next time.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. Take care.
Yeah, brother.